Will you please turn off all electronic devices and place them on a silent mode? Thank you.
Good afternoon, friends and family. Petty Officer Justin Reed. On behalf of the United States Navy, we'd like to extend our deepest condolences. At this time, military honors will be rendered. Please prepare for tax. President of the United States Navy, and the grateful nation, please accept this flag as a symbol of appreciation for your loved ones' faithful and honorable service. Also celebrate.
Shvit Adonai, Denei Tami, Kimimi, Balemot, Lechei, Simach Libi, Yogel Kivoli, Av, Visaris Kol Leveto, Kilot Azov, Nafshi Leshol, Lo Titen Chazdecha, Lireot Shachot, Todieni Orachaim, Seva, Silmachotena, Anecho, Nimot, Biminachanetzor. I have set the eternal before me always. God is at my side, and I shall not be moved. Therefore does my heart exalt, and my soul rejoice. My being is secure, for you will not abandon me to death, nor let your faithful ones see destruction. You show me the path of life. Your presence brings fullness of joy. Enduring happiness is your gift. And together we say, Amen. Death has taken our beloved Marvin. Our friends grieve in their darkened world, and in their silence there is lamentation. In their tears there is loneliness. Lost in their sorrow, may they find the presence of loving friends. Hear them, O God, and be with them. For Marvin's love that united us in life, in which death cannot sever, for his companionship that we shared along life's path, and which continues through the tenderness of memory, for the gifts of his heart and mind that brought us joy and happiness and are now a precious remembrance. For all these and more, we give thanks to you, O God. In this time of grief, we listen to the voice of our sacred scriptures that bring us an ever new message of God's nearness. It tells us of our kinship with the Creator, in light as in darkness, in joy as in sorrow, in life as in death. Nadonoi miagor yachadecho mishkon behar kodshecha tolech tamim ufael tzedek vidover belivavo lo ragel alishano lo asa reachura v'cherpa lo nasha al korabo mivazeh b'einav nimas v'et yarei Adonai yikaved nishba lehara lo yomir kaskolo natan v'neshech v'shachad nakilo nakach osei ele lo yamut le'olam. Adonai, who may abide in your house? Who may dwell in your holy mountain? Those who are upright, who do justly, who speak the truth within their hearts, who do not slander others or wrong them, or bring shame upon them, who scorn the lawless, but honor those who revere God, who give their word and come what may, do not retract. Those who live in this way shall never be shaken. I ask the congregation to please join me in the 23rd Psalm. Marlene, would you like to come up? The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside still waters. He restoreth my soul. He guideth me in straight paths for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou hast anointed my head with oil, my cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever. And together we say, Amen.
Amen.
In sorrow, Job cried out, Adonai Natan Adonai Lakach, Yehi Shem Adonai Borach. God you have given, God you have taken away, blessed be the name of God. An ancient people, we are well acquainted with grief and the valley of shadows. Death and sorrow are not strangers to us, yet the centuries have taught us that a good name endures beyond the grave, and that there is strength in faith. With Job we say, Adonai Natan, God you have given. God you gave us a loved one who will not be forgotten. For all that was good and enduring in his life, we offer our deepest thanks of our hearts. Adonai Lakach, God you have taken away. We pray for the strength to turn our broken hearts into an altar of trust before which we acknowledge your sovereignty and love, as we now say, Yehi Shem Adonai Borach. Blessed be the name of God forever. It is appropriate at this time that members of the family come forward and offer eulogy, words of wisdom about the deceased, and stories about Marvin that they wish for you to understand and take with you. With that, I call Inez, Gary, and Jay to Paul.
Thank you all so very much for coming. Thank you all so very much for coming. About 4 or 5 years ago, my husband Terrence and I thought we should stop by to check on my father before an impending snowstorm. We wanted to make sure that he had enough food and so on. His wife, Marlene, was actually in the hospital at that time, and he was alone for several days. And if my memory is correct, he had, in fact, himself recently recovered from major surgery and a few months in the hospitals and rehabs. We pulled into the house fairly late at night, and we didn't see the car. Oh, my God, we said, where's the car? Has he gone out driving? He claimed he could still drive. In fact, he did still drive, but we strongly discouraged it. We looked up and down the street. The car was definitely gone. We rang the bell, and he came to the door. Where's the car? We asked. He smiled. I got inspired. Come and look. And he took us into the garage and showed us how he had hung the ladder and other things on hooks on the garage wall, moved boxes onto shelves, and made room to park the car in the garage before the snowstorm. I did this about 10 o'clock last night, he said. I got inspired. He was about 91 or 92 at the time. This pretty much exemplifies Marvin. You can't tell him what to do, and you can't keep him down. When he makes up his mind, he goes all in. As we were growing up as kids, he always told us, when you're faced with a problem, you gotta attack. This spirit was established in him at a young age. Born in 1925 in Logan, North Philadelphia, Marvin grew up in the Depression, raised primarily by his mother, Bessie Korff. His father Isaac was usually on the road as a traveling salesman, and his brother Bernie was several years older. As kids, he kept us entertained with stories of his back alley shenanigans, creating a stray cat zoo with his friend Yankee, playing stickball in the streets with Norman, bodybuilding with his buddy Chick. Those are real nicknames. Upon graduation from Simon Gratz High School, he enlisted in the U.S. Navy and trained to be a radio technician. He served from 1943 to 1946 on the USS Savannah. His story of escorting FDR to the Yalta Conference was published in the book The Last Veterans, which is in fact out on the table. His Navy lingo became part of his language, and we grew up with it. The kitchen was to be swabbed over and out at the end of a phone call, and in fact, he would take a muster when loading the group into the family station wagon. He'd call, "Muster, let's have a muster," and he'd call up the names, "Gary, here, Jay, here," and he'd call himself, "Marvin, Marvin's here," so we can proceed. Following the war, Marvin attended the Moore School of Engineering at the University of Pennsylvania, where he got a degree in electrical engineering and made lifelong friends. When I was a student, my father would tell me, no one works harder than a student in school. He remembered his all-night study sessions and encouraged his own children to focus on their studies rather than getting a job. When he needed a break and some fresh air from his studies, he went hiking on the Wissahickon, something he enjoyed his entire life, going on to lead hikes for the Outdoor Club of South Jersey. And he would say there, "You'd never know you're in Philadelphia. It feels like you're in the mountains of New Hampshire." Upon graduation in 1950, he and his two buddies from Penn, Joe and Richie, now both gone, drove out west. This cemented in him a lifelong love of the mountains, adventure, fixing cars, and collecting elk antlers. He continued to travel out west on ski trips into his 80s and loved to share stories, as I traveled as well. I feel like I'll never forgive him for suggesting that we take Loveland Pass in Colorado rather than the highway. It was the most terrifying drive of my life. And when we got back, he seemed surprised when I told him. He said he and Joe had driven it in the snow. There are a couple of things that define my father's life, and one was his work. He had a long and distinguished career working as a radar systems engineer for RCA. He got a master's in control theory from Penn while working full-time and, oh yes, had married my mother, Elaine, and had 3 little boys at the time. The highlight of his professional career was the 6 years he spent living and working on Kwajalein and Marshall Islands, the main downrange tracking system for the Pacific Missile Test Range. He did top secret work as a U.S. defense contractor. This was the most seminal time for our family. Our family loved the islands. Marvin loved Kwaj. He became president of the tennis club. He hiked the coral reef, helped my brothers to build a tropical fish pond in the backyard, photographed sunsets, and instead of the cats of the alley, it was the cats of the island. Marvin would get up at 6 o'clock in the morning and take a plane to work on a neighboring island, working on top secret missions for the country's defense. He never told us what he did exactly. And I remember asking him as a little girl, "What do you do at work?" And he'd respond, "Well, I sit at a desk and I write reports." One of my brothers later joked that his job was to get on the phone and confuse the Russians. If you know Marvin, you know that he could pull it off. He continued to work and consult for RCA into the late 1980s, working in their satellite division in Hightstown. He was wearing the tie that he was given upon retirement. In the UPenn Alumni Directory, my father had summarized his career, and his closing words to that were, "Looking back, there is little that I would change. I enjoyed my childhood activities, playing ball and street games in Philadelphia. I was proud to serve in the Navy in World War II. I loved the UOP and I loved RCA. I can't envision any other profession other than electrical engineering." The other keystone of my father's life was his family. Things we grew up hearing. Attack a problem, you gotta attack. Never force. My daughter even said this as a baby. I remember when he was a babysit. Don't let anyone do your homework for you. Something he said that his mother had always said to him. Get your racket back and follow through. Eat over the table, don't make crumbs, check your oil, don't worry about what other people think. And when I was driving him crazy, he'd say to me, "Vidrere don kop." Go bang your own head against the wall and stop banging mine. Marvin had 5 children, and I guess we all drove him crazy. But he always supported our desire to pursue our dreams. Music lessons, horseback riding camp, turtle ponds, massage school, tennis lessons, dance lessons. buying land in Israel, starting a tie-dye business, hitchhiking around the country, studying in Europe, interning at a TV station. The list does go on. Even if it clashed with his ideals of frugality, practicality, and establishing yourself, he gave us the freedom to find ourselves. And he was welcoming to everyone. "Hello, I'm Papa Marv," he'd say, upon meeting one of my friends. As the only girl, I have 4 brothers, I was taught to take care of myself, whether it was jump-starting a car, baiting a crab trap, or writing a strongly worded letter to deal with a billing debacle. Whenever I was done, he'd say to me, "I'm proud of you, daughter, you attacked." He provided unconditional love and support to me, and I know how proud he is of his granddaughter, who is about to get her second master's degree from his alma mater. He loved Penn. Jay, I'm sure you remember, he would drive us through the campus and sing the alma mater on his many trips to and from New Jersey. I wish he could be here to meet his twin great-grandchildren. But on Father's Day, when my daughter announced her pregnancy to twins, he said, "I feel different somehow." Marvy, as he was known to his cousins, Marv, Papa Marv, Dad, noble father, Papa, Grandpa, great-grandpa. 96 years of living life to the fullest. He loved life. He loved a good meal. He loved the beauty of the great outdoors. He loved beautiful women, especially blondes. He loved to give advice and to help others. My father gave me so many things. A zest and a passion for life, a love of adventure and the outdoors, his crazy, precise memory for people from 40 years ago, a love of stories, appreciation of a good omelet. We all love eggs in our family. Unfortunately, his upper respiratory chronic sinusitis and tendency to procrastinate, but we always get the job done. My father literally saved my life so many times, and it is hard to imagine a future of not stopping by to watch the game, or eat ice cream, or ask for electrical advice, or share family stories. I miss him so much already. I'm sorry. But I know that, unable to do the things he so loved, enjoying a ball game or making breakfast for his wife, he was ready to head for the last roundup, a song he was singing for as long as I can remember, a song about a cowboy heading for the last roundup. I think of a favorite quote of my dear daughter Ashlyn's in closing. "Don't cry because it's over, smile because it happened." Thank you, Papa Marv. Thank you, Dad.
The 2 people up here, my amazing brother Gary and my sister Inez. They have really just been extraordinary, remarkable people these last several years taking care of my father. Second, I'd like to thank Marlene for keeping my dad on his toes for all of these years. He always would mention quite often that he had to stay alive in order to take care of his wife and to be there for her, to be alive for, not for himself, but for Marlene. And also Sylvia and Essie, who are in the back, who cared so much for my father in his final years. Third, I'd like to literally thank all of you. These are some crazy times that we live in. It's a little bananas out there, so thank you for showing up and for being there for us and for my father. I'd also like to take a moment to acknowledge those who are no longer here. My dad outlived, I think, everybody, other than maybe Lex's father, Mr. Brockington. But I know that he really loved those guys. And Nosson and Ed Alberni and Bill Brown and Jack Spratlin, Izzy Behrman. Sorry. So, my dad was absolutely fascinated with sports, and it was the thing that really kind of pulled us together. He could rattle off, even in his 90s, every single starting lineup and every single pitching rotation for every single Phillies team from the 1930s. It was insane. As much as he loved the Phillies, there was nothing he loved more than arguing about the Phillies. Gee, good Lord. I mean, he loved to argue. But at the end of the day, it wasn't an argument. He was just preparing you for life. He was challenging your assertions about the Phillies bullpen, or their lack of power, problems up the middle, no left-handed relievers in the bullpen, whatever the case may be. And you had to present yourself. You had to articulate yourself. And if you didn't, he would win that argument. And it didn't matter if it was about the Phillies. It could be about the Eagles. It could be about how to properly make a veggie omelet. He really loved to verbally joust, and that was something that I really enjoyed over the years. And I ended up initially making a career out of sports reporting. I think a lot of it had to do with him. My sister touched on so many things that I'm not going to, but I did want to say that it was very confounding to me that for about the last 30 to 35 years, almost every time I would see him, because I didn't live in the area, he would say, I'm on the verge of dying. I'm dying. There was some malady, as we get older, there are all sorts of things that affect us. He was always on the verge of death, but we knew better, because he was the only person who I think put wheat German walnuts on salads in the 1970s. I mean, this guy loved food, but not only did he love food, it didn't have to be expensive food, it just had to be tasty food. He knew every great ice cream shop in South Jersey, every great pizzeria in South Jersey, every produce stand. He even knew this guy. We would get this shrimp for, I remember Martha coming to so many of these wonderful family gatherings for just whatever reason. And we'd have these shrimp, he called them rock shrimp. They were giant. And he knew some guy on some street corner who would only be there for a couple of hours, like on a Friday, on the Black Horse Pike. It was like, someone was handing off hush money or something. He'd be like, I gotta go to the Black Horse Pike to get the rock shrimp. And he was a guy who was eating fruits and vegetables long before everybody else. And we knew better. We knew that he would probably get to 100. But he didn't, because he had an emergency surgery when he was 90, right around his 90th birthday. And that set him back a little bit. But to wrap this up, when he had kind of come out of the fog of that surgery, I'd say it was probably, he was maybe 92 or 93. I remember it was his birthday, and I came up, I think it was his 93rd birthday. I came up to New Jersey, and we opened up a bottle of wine, and we just had a little bit, and we were just talking about this, that, and the other thing. And it was probably one of the most meaningful moments in my life, and I hope it provides some meaning and some comfort for you all. And that is that he was a man who actually had a lot of regrets, and he carried a lot of guilt with him for the things that he thought that he should accomplish, or maybe the things that he didn't do. And he talked about these frustrations. But after he came out of that surgery, it was like a cloud had been lifted. And on that night, he talked about how he had lived a great life, and he had lived a full life. And he was proud of the person who he was, and he was proud of the people who were in his family. And that he was happy. And he was not filled with guilt or with as much anxiety as I think he had. you know, it's also interesting that he said to me during that conversation, because we were talking about our childhoods and his father, and he said that his father never said that he loved him. And I just couldn't understand it. And he had never said that he loved me. And at that moment, I said to him, "It's okay, Dad." I'm sorry. I said, "It's okay to say that you love your son, because I love you." And from that point forward, we told each other that we love each other. And the last thing that he had was ice cream. Sorry.
I think it's very difficult to fully appreciate our parents. Certainly when we're growing up, children have no idea how much work, sacrifice is involved. I think only when you have kids of our own, you begin to understand the thankless role of a parent. Good parenting is extraordinarily difficult. I do know of one couple here today who have never gotten angry with their children. And if you know who it is, Ashley and Brett. Twins, now have not yet been born. You wait. My father raised 5 kids. We were not easy, okay? So, you know, there's easy children, there's not easy children. We were in definitely the not easy camp, okay? There's no doubt about it. Nobody would question that statement at all if they knew us. He provided a safe, prosperous home, saved money towards our college funds. He could have certainly lived a much more luxurious life, traveled a lot more, had a lot more fun, but for him, family was paramount. He really put that first throughout his life. He also had the highest moral standards and set an example for us, which was just way up there. I remember when I was 6 years old, we were in a car together, and I had just him and I just finished a little can of grape soda. And I wanted to dispose of it, but there were no cup holders back then. There wasn't a trash can in the car. It wasn't on the floor, you know. So I just thought the one about it. I knew I didn't want him to see me, so I just snuck it out very carefully. Just, you know. Well, he saw, of course. And he stopped, and I went back, and I picked up the can. And I think that's the only time I ever livered. You know, I knew I was supposed to do it, and it was wrong, and you know, he wasn't one to say, "Don't do it again," or something like that. You pick up and go. I think anyone who's gone out to dinner with him for lunch or whatever, meal, knows that he would look at the bill line by line, every number. Now, that wasn't as onerous as it sounds, because my father could, and I'm not exaggerating at all, he could add up numbers in his head as faster than most people can put them into the calculator. He was that good. And of course, if he found they made a mistake, if they overcharged for something, you know, he would bring it to attention. He was all very polite, "Miss, you know, so." He knew that they could make mistakes, and he wasn't upset about it. But the other thing was that if they had undercharged him, if they forgot to charge him for a drink or dessert or some item on the menu, he also brought that up. And I remember, it's pretty young, I asked him, says, "You know, they won't notice, you know, why don't you just, you know, why bother with this, you know?" And he said to me, "You know, these people work hard for the money." He says, "They're not well paid. You know, we ate the food, it was good, we should pay for it." You know, he wasn't trying to get away with anything. And you know, that honesty, that integrity was throughout his life and everything he did. And I think part of that was growing up in poverty. He performed, when he was in his youth, he performed manual labor. He never felt he was better than anyone else who was less fortunate. He didn't recognize class differences. He didn't care about a person's race, nationality, religion. He made friends. It wasn't on those bases, or if he regarded someone who had nothing to do with those things. And I think those are things which we really learned from him. He had a very strong work ethic, as has been alluded to. Part of that work ethic was he tried to impart to us. He was always giving us chores. And we grew up mowing the lawn, gardening, weeding, and then of course we'd have to help him fix things around the house, which, we didn't like doing too much, or help him look at his cars. He kind of insisted we be there as his assistant. And I never really, I think I only appreciated that when I owned a home. And so it's like, oh, the drain's leaking. Yeah, I can go fix that. Let's see what's under here. And, the washing machine's broken. Well, let's see. How can I take that apart? These things are pretty simple. It's pruning trees. It really, you learned a lot from him. He knew what he was doing as a parent. He loved the outdoors. He introduced us to hiking, canoeing, skiing, camping. Those are things which I've enjoyed throughout my life. A love for the outdoors. He was a doer. I felt growing up, and all of us felt that we could do anything. We had no fears traveling or doing things which makes them a little crazy, but in hindsight, probably some of them were. I think one of his other great virtues was loyalty. He was incredibly loyal to his family, his wife, his friends. He had friends he knew since elementary school, and they were still close friends. He still got together with them. He had a friend that needed help, maybe he was rewiring the garage or something like that. He was always loved to go over and lend a helping hand. For me, when I graduated high school, I didn't go to college, but decided to travel and do a lot of not necessarily wise things before I decided to go to college and go to medical school. And he said I had to find myself. He didn't say, "Oh my God, he's wasting his life." He just kind of was patient, and I always knew. Well, he didn't support me. He never sent me money. I didn't ask for it, but I always knew that I got into trouble. I was at home to come to. It was always there. He was there if I needed him. His religious beliefs were a little unconventional. I thought of mentioning these just because I think it's important. This is his memorial service. And he did not accept religious beliefs on faith or no one could talk him into anything. He gave everything he did was complete detailed analysis. He did not take anybody's word for anything. And for many years, I remember, he didn't believe in God. And when I asked him about that, he said, well, he just could not conceive of a God which would allow so much suffering and evil in the world. But he actually did have the feeling that he would exist after death, that he did not feel he was a mortal being, just limited by a physical body. He felt he was something more than that. And later in life, he did come to believe in God. And when I asked him about that, he said that just the complexity and beauty of the universe could not be explained by random events. There had to be something there. There had to be some intelligent being or spirit involved. He wasn't one to state details which he hadn't figured out himself. So he wasn't going to take my word for it, what I had read, and my beliefs, or anybody else's word for it. But he did feel that way. He also believed in reincarnation, which I think is interesting. And he said it was the only thing that made sense. He said he could not conceive of a God which would arbitrarily create one person healthy, handsome, intelligent, and then randomly give the next person a club foot, poverty, and abusive parents. He just couldn't reconcile that. And reincarnation appeared to his engineer's mathematical mind. Essentially, the idea is that one's abilities, family, inclinations, opportunities in this life reflect our efforts and accomplishments in our previous lives. Dad believed that one should work on oneself to become better. He liked the concept that not have completed one's work in this life, you have the opportunity to continue your efforts in the next life. Always strive to be better, become close to perfection, even if you never quite get there. There's a couple passages I want to read quickly, which I hope won't offend anybody, because I think they reflect his belief system regarding death and life after death. And from the Bhagavad Gita. Let's just take a moment. So from chapter 2, Bhagavad Gita. The self is never born, nor does it ever perish, nor having come into existence will it again cease to be. It is birthless, eternal, changeless, ever the same. It is not slain when the body is killed. Just as an individual puts on new clothes, so the body encased its soul, relinquishing a decaying body, enters another. No weapon can pierce the soul. It cannot be burnt or wetted or dried. The soul is immutable, all permeating, ever calm and immovable, eternally the same. Knowing it to be such, thou shouldest not lament. So, I don't believe we should grieve for my father. He is no longer trapped in a decrepit and senile body. He never wanted to be an invalid. He said many times in the last few years that he was satisfied with his life and was ready to move on. He took joy in his accomplishments as an engineer. He was happy with his children, and we are his true legacy. We shall sorely miss him, but rather than grieving, we should be celebrating that he is finally free from pain and infirmity. Thank you.
As we've heard, the world clearly has lost a mensch, a man among men. Marvin Korff will be missed by many people that couldn't be here, all of those that are here, as well as the legacy that he leaves behind. His wife Marlene, to which we offer our deepest condolences. His children Sima, Sunset, Gary, Inez, and Jay. Grandchildren Esther and her Shmuel. Yitzkar, Sky, Shmulik, Ashling and her Brett. Austin, Sierra, Zachary, Samantha, Chris, Devin, Tamar, Gabriel, and Nathan. And 11 great-grandchildren, with 2 on the way. We pray that he finds his place in Gan Eden, the Garden of Eden, what Jews call heaven. We hope and pray that when he gets there, he's escorted to the place among the holy and pure. At this time, I ask you all to offer your own private supplications. Think of love, peace, gratitude for the time that Marvin spent with you and in your life. And I ask you to please take a moment of silence. May the words of our mouths mouths and the meditations of our heart be acceptable unto you, O Lord, our rock and our Redeemer. Into your care, dear God, we entrust the spirit of Mordechai ben Abraham, Marvin Korff. For you keep faith with your children as in death and life. Sustain us that when we meet with serenity the mysteries that lie ahead, knowing that when we walk through the valley of the shadow of death, you, O God, are with us. A loving friend in whom we put our trust, you are the light of our life and our hope for eternity. At this time, I am going to recite the El Moed Rachamim, an ancient prayer more than 3,000 years old, which asks God's help to bind Marvin's soul with the bonds of eternal life. And at this time, I ask the congregation to please rise. Compassionate God, eternal Spirit of the universe, grant perfect rest in your sheltering presence to Marvin Korff, Mordechai ben Abraham, who has entered eternity. Our God of mercy, let him find refuge in your eternal presence in the shadow of your wings. Let his soul be bound up in the bond of everlasting life. God, you are his inheritance. May he rest in peace. And together we say, Amen. Adonai natan ve'Adonai lakach, yehi shem Adonai v'orach. God you gave, God you have taken away, blessed be the name of God. Baruch Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher yatzar etchem b'tzalmo, v'zan v'kilachem etchem b'tovo, v'mihid etchem badin, v'nata b'tochechem chaya olam. Baruch ata Adonai, dayan ha'emet. אתה גיבור לעולם אדוני רב להשיח, וחכה חיים בחסד, וחיי הכל ברחמים רבים. סומך נופים רופא חולים, ומתיר אסורים, ומקיים אמונתו לשני עפר. מי כמוך מגמורות, ומדום מלך, מחמית ומחיי, ומצביע ישוע. Baruch ata Adonai noteah b'tachem chaya olam. Congregation, may be seated for a moment. We praise you, Adonai, our God, ruler of the universe, who forms us in divine image, who nourishes and sustains us to your goodness, who causes all of us to die, who implants immortal life within us. We praise you, O God, the judge of truth. Eternal is your might, O God. All life is your gift. Great is your power to save. With love you sustain the living. With great compassion you give life to all. You send help to the fallen, healing to the sick, and bring freedom to the captive, and keep faith with those who sleep in the dust. We praise you, God, who implants immortal life within us. Al makom yavo tov to his eternal home in peace. And together we say, Amen. Lech ish l'chacha Adonai, lech v'Adonai yeh imach, v'ala levanecha, tzidkecha kevod Adonai, yosfecha. Go on your way, for God has called you. Go on your way, that God may be with you. May your righteousness go before you, and the glory of God receive you. And together we say, Amen. At this time, I ask the congregation, please rise, as we will recite Kaddish for the first time. Yitkadal, Yitkadash, Shemer Abba. Yamad, Yivrach, Yotei, Yomlich, Malchutei. V'chayechon, v'mechon, v'chayediko, Beit Yisrael, Ba'agala, V'sman Karim, Yimru, Amen. Yehei, Shmer Abba, Mevorach, V'yalam, Me'amaya. Yitparach, Yishtabach, Yitpa'ar, Yitramam, Nasei. Yitadar, Yitalev, Yitalav, Shmei, Kudusha, Brechu. Ye'ela, Mikol, Brechata, V'shirata, Tush, Brechata, V'nechemata, Damiram, V'yama, V'imru, Amen. Yehei, Shlomo, Rav, Min, Shemaya, V'chayim, Alenu, Yako, Yisrael, V'imru, Amen. Aseh Shalom, V'ma, V'yaseh Shalom, Alenu, Yako, Yisrael, V'imru, Amen. May God grant peace to all who mourn, all of us who may be comforted, and together we say, Amen. Please be seated for a moment.
We have the pallbearers, please. We ask you to rise once more, please. Ladies and gentlemen, I would ask that you kindly remain seated. This way, please. This way.